In this section, we will be exploring white supremacy, another deeply entrenched and historical system of oppression which has caused deep inequalities that we still experience today. To many, white supremacy tends to invoke specific images about far-right groups. You're correct in thinking that this is an example of white supremacy, but it's not the only one. In this module, we will investigate the mechanics of white supremacy, its historical context, and its relation to social investment. Many forms of systemic and institutional racism are direct consequences of white supremacy and its legacies. We need to understand and unlearn what we have been conditioned to believe, which has been constructed around whiteness. Without understanding the historical context left by white supremacy, we cannot adequately address and respond to racial inequity and other forms of injustice which we see in society and workplaces. In this video, we are exploring white supremacy and white culture. However, it's worth keeping in mind that different forms of racism and colorism exist and have different historical contexts and roots. Different racialized people and communities across the globe may experience racism in various ways. In this video, we'll explain the historical background, the racial inequities it has led to today, and how that has created an imbalance in the social investment sector. White supremacy is rooted in racial hierarchy and the belief of the inherent superiority of white people, and this foundational ideology underpins both colonialism and imperialism. This can be traced back to the European imperialism and the British Empire. It has managed to prevail as a result of capitalist and imperialist structures and is rooted in the idea of white superiority and the subjugation of others. It involves a variety of institutions we interact with daily. It has been used to justify the rule and exploitation of racialized people and territories, serving as a rationale for the unequal distribution of power, wealth, and resources. Through colonialism and imperialism, white supremacist ideologies have been enforced through systems of governance, law, education, and culture, perpetuating inequality and injustice on a global scale. A historical example of imperialism is the transatlantic slave trade, which involved European powers primarily from the 16th to the 19th centuries. The exploitation of African labour was a key component of the economic and imperial ambitions of European nations such as Portugal, Italy, and the UK during this period. More than 15 million victims of the transatlantic slave trade were kidnapped and taken to the Americas to work on plantations and in other industries, which led to more than 15 million black people becoming enslaved. The transatlantic slave trade not only geographically drained labour and created long-standing economic imbalances, but the impact and traumas of the transatlantic slave trade on human beings were profound and enduring. These have left a lasting mark on individuals, families, societies, and continents. Whilst white supremacy is an ideology, white culture is used to centre, normalise, and standardise certain beliefs and practices. To understand how white supremacy influences institutional racism, it's essential first to understand what white culture is and how a dominant white culture leads to harmful ideas of racial superiority. So let's start with that. White culture can teach, influence, and condition society to believe that we should all strive for whiteness and that this equates to success and is the ideal. Now, it's important to understand that white culture upholds many day-to-day standards from how we behave to how we talk, eat, look, and act. Many of the microaggressions that people experience in workplaces result from not conforming to the expectations of white culture. For example, how people dress, what they eat, whether they drink alcohol or not, and how they spend their leisure time. This leads to racial bias, overt racism, and discrimination. It has a profound impact on people's perceptions of racialized people and it influences how racialized people navigate the world around them. In response to white culture, racialized people are often forced into assimilating using coping strategies such as code switching to fit in. We'll share articles in the additional reading section on microaggressions, assimilation, and code switching so you can explore more on these. White supremacy has had and still has profound and far-reaching impacts on racialized people in the UK and around the world, shaping social, economic, and political structures in ways that perpetuate inequality and injustice. The legacies of white supremacy remain. We will explore the disparities shortly. There's not a single system that isn't in some way influenced by a colonial past and the impact of white supremacy. Education. In England, young black people are more likely to pursue higher education than average, but less likely to enter universities, considered prestigious, end up in highly skilled jobs, or have career satisfaction. While racialized people are more likely to have a university degree, the monetary value of that qualification is worth less in the labour market, with nearly 40% of black African graduates in non-graduate jobs, nearly double the white British rate of 20%. Employment. Job applicants with names that sound African and Asian face higher rejection rates, even with identical resumes to those assumed to be white. Racialised workers are more likely to participate in the gig economy, up to 25% compared to 14% of the general population. Around 18% of Bangladeshi workers and 11% of Pakistani and Chinese workers are paid below the national minimum wage, compared to 3% of white workers. Household wealth. Black, African, and Bangladeshi households have 10 times less wealth than white British people. Poverty rates vary significantly by ethnicity, but all racialised groups are more likely to be living in poverty. This is due to lower wages, higher unemployment rates, higher rates of part-time working, higher housing costs in England's large cities, especially London, and slightly larger household size. Healthcare. Racialised women report poor experiences of maternity care, including feeling unsupported, disrespected, or discriminated against by healthcare providers. According to data from the UK Office for National Statistics, black women are more than 4 times as likely to die in pregnancy or childbirth compared to white women. Cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, mental health conditions, and some types of cancer and COVID-19 all disproportionately affect different racialised groups. Research shows that healthcare approaches are not tailored and targeted effectively for different racialised groups. Housing. Financial institutions' algorithms and criteria can perpetuate racial disparities in loan approval rates and terms. When these algorithms are trained on historical data that includes racially biased lending practices, they continue to offer less favourable terms to applicants from certain racialised backgrounds. Criminal justice. Facial recognition cameras and AI systems can't tell black people apart, and as a result, this has led to an increased racial profiling. White supremacy manifests through hate crimes and police brutality. Black and racialised communities are disproportionately affected by these injustices, facing higher rates of poverty, incarceration, and violence compared to their white counterparts. Racial inequality in the social investment sector in the UK remains a significant issue, reflecting broader system disparities. These result in inequities on the supply, those who provide capital, and demand, those who seek capital sides. On the supply side, investors, despite the growing recognition of the need for diversity and inclusion, racialised individuals are underrepresented in leadership roles within social investment. This gap is evident not only in the makeup of investment teams, but also at the decision-making level, where racialised professionals are significantly underrepresented. The Inclusive Impact Report by the Diversity Forum provides a detailed examination of diversity within the social impact sector and highlights that racialised women are particularly underrepresented in director roles. Research shows that racial disparities impact the allocation of resources and support on the demand side, with black-led and racialised social enterprises often facing more significant challenges in accessing social investment. The SEUK State of the Sector report shows that women-led social enterprises are applying for and raising smaller amounts of finance than others. The situation is considerably worse for racialised social enterprises, which are raising finance around 1/4 the size of their white-led peers. The Adebowale Commission on Social Investment, chaired by Lord Victor Adebowale, was established to review and propose reforms for the social investment market to support social enterprises better, highlighting the disparities black-led social enterprises experience due to systemic barriers and structural inequalities. The Commission's report, Reclaiming the Future, Reforming Social Investment for the Next Decade, calls for significant changes to address issues resulting in social enterprises being underserved by current social investment models. Key findings relating to the system of oppression from the Commission include the following. Significant challenges for entrepreneurs remain. The Commission points out that social investment needs to adequately support black-led social enterprises. To better serve diverse communities, a more inclusive approach in the design and decision-making process of social investment products is recommended. Racialised entrepreneurs and social enterprises face additional barriers to accessing capital, including social investment. Research by the British Business Bank has shown disparities in funding outcomes for racialised entrepreneurs with lower approval rates for loans and investment compared to white entrepreneurs. There needs to be a shift in design philosophy. The report suggests that the design of social investment products should start with social enterprises' needs and desires, which would support black and brown-led social traders across the region, rather than being driven solely by feasibility and market acceptance considerations. This shift would make the products more effective and desirable to social enterprises. Community and regional focus. The report highlights initiatives like Liverpool City Region's Blast Network, which supports black and brown-led social traders across the region with peer support and access to investment. The report emphasises the need for comprehensive structural reform of the social investment market. It notes that the needs of social enterprises have not been adequately prioritised, hindering their access to crucial financial resources. The Commission advocates for a market where social investments are not only about financial returns, but also about achieving substantial social impact thereby redefining the purpose and approach of social investment in the UK. Initiatives to address these inequalities have included targeted funds and programs and the creation of black and racialized-led wholesalers to support underrepresented groups. However, progress is gradual, and ongoing efforts are needed to ensure equity and inclusion within the sector.